Many in the theater world here in Seattle know of David Armstrong as Fifth Avenue Theater's artistic director and executive producer from 2000 to 2018, and now he adds the title of author. This is his new book, Broadway Nation: How Immigrant, Jewish, Queer, and Black Artists Invented the Broadway Musical. So much to learn about here, and David joins me now.
Hello.
Hi. So first off, tell us about your work at the Fifth Avenue Theater.
Well, from 2000 to 2018, I was the producing artistic director and then eventually the executive director of the Fifth Avenue Theater. So I always say it was all my fault, basically. If you liked the shows that we did during those periods, it was my fault. If you didn't like them, it was also my fault. But it was a thrilling time. It was a job of a lifetime. It was amazing.
That's so special. And tell us too about your work at UW, which led to this book, I understand.
So when I left the Fifth Avenue, the University of Washington School of Drama approached me about teaching a course there. And so I thought, well, and about teaching a course on the history of the Broadway musical. And so I started putting that together, and I've taught there since 2018 every year. And out of that, it's really, the first came of my podcast, which is also called Broadway Nation, which was sort of a general audience friendly version of my lectures that I do at the University of Washington. And then I got approached by the publishers of this book, Bloomsbury Publishing, to would I be interested in writing a book based on my course that I teach at the University of Washington.
How long did it take for you to put this together?
It was a two-year effort, absolutely, and with many, many long days of writing. I, again, loved every minute of it, but it was a giant endeavor.
Oh my gosh, what can people find in this book?
It's a comprehensive history of the Broadway musical for the entire 125-year history of the Broadway musical, right up to today, what it brings forward in ways that many other books, there are a lot of great books about Broadway, but this one focuses on how immigrant, Jewish, queer, and Black artists were the primary inventors of the Broadway musical and have sustained the Broadway musical throughout its history. So it's this weird thing that's sort of an outcast art form, and yet it's at the center of American culture.
Gosh, and why do you think Broadway has remained so popular 125 years after its creation?
Because it involves, it creates an experience that you can't replicate any other way. It's the live theater experience. Look at the Wicked. What will be
one of my favorites?
Yeah, and what will be the big movie event of this year? Wicked Part 2, which is a Broadway musical. So what's, I think, quite amazing is 125 years later, Broadway is still at the center of American culture. And there's Hairspray. That is a show which started here in Seattle at the Fifth Avenue Theater. We did the world premiere of it in 2001, and it's gone on to be one of the great it's now a historic musical, and it went from the Fifth Avenue Theater to Broadway and won the Tony Award for Best Musical. And that is Times Square, which is, of course, throughout this whole period, really my book starts when Times Square becomes the center of the theater world. And that's the back of George M. Cohan, who, is one of those names that still more than 100 years later, we know his songs, we know who he was, because he's one of the inventors of the Broadway musical, one of those immigrant inventors of the Broadway musical.
Fascinating. Were there any big surprises while writing this book that you just were like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is true?
Yeah, and I thought I knew everything about the Broadway musical, but as I started doing the research first to teach the course and then for the book, there were a lot of surprises, things I didn't know or I only knew this little bit about, and there was this whole world, especially in terms of the involvement of Black creators, of the Black artists, were so much more involved and so much more prominent, and then sort of got forgotten about for many reasons, some of which you can imagine, but especially in the earliest days, the earliest decade, from 1900 to 1910, there were 20 Black musicals on Broadway, and which we just have forgotten about. So part of the book is to bring that forward, and women especially were also much more involved in the creation of the Broadway musical than we generally acknowledge throughout the entire period.
Gosh, okay, and what role has Seattle played in the history of Broadway musical?
Surprising a lot, partly through the Fifth Avenue Theater, starting with Hairspray. I'm happy to say that during the time I was there, we sent 9 musicals to Broadway. including Hairspray, which won the Tony Award, Memphis, which won the Tony Award for Best Musical, and Aladdin. Disney's Aladdin started at the Fifth Avenue Theater, is still running on Broadway today. But then other theaters like the Seattle Rep has been involved with Come From Away, which the Fifth Avenue was also slightly involved in. And then the Intiman Theater sent Light in the Piazza to Broadway during that time. So there's been a lot, it's been an incubator for new work, for new Broadway musicals, which have their world premiere in Seattle and then go to Broadway. So everyone in Seattle who's participated in seeing those shows is part of the history of the Broadway musical.
So exciting. Where can people find your book?
My book is available everywhere books are found, certainly on Amazon, but I recommend if you go to bloomsbury.com, which is the publisher's website, you get a 10% discount.
There you go. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
And just a reminder, David is actually holding an author event at the Elliott Bay Book Company on Friday, September 12th at 7 p.m.